Hi, I'm Talal Al-Asmani, and welcome to another segment of Mawaheb Chat. Today I'm here with Ahmed Arshi and Mohammed Yusuf, two very, very talented writers here in the region and specifically in the UAE. So thank you very much for joining us, guys.
Thanks for having us.
I want to talk about the challenges of writing in the region. And since you guys are both writers of feature film and of television, and you guys have a lot of experience and the challenges coming from, I think it'll be fair to say, a new school of writing, and then trying to integrate that with the challenges here, it'll be great to share those experiences with everybody who's watching. You know, this is a very casual chat, so please feel free to contribute however way you choose. The first thing I want to ask is, how, and maybe you can start us off, how did you manage to get your foot in the door into the writing circle here?
In the very beginning, they were looking for writers. And my name came out because I already worked in the States for quite some time. I was an employee at the Emirates Foundation, where my job was to give grants to filmmakers and to artists. So I kind of got involved in the film scene over here. And since I was an employee, I wasn't able to do anything of for myself. So I did things my own way, and I entered a few festivals here, and that's where, you know, it's a small circle at the end of filmmakers here. I'm talking about 2007, and that's when, you know, we became like a family, and we kind of got integrated into the circle of filmmakers here.
See, one thing that was interesting about, just as we met before this, is that you're both integrated into circles, but you two have never met, so I'm sure the circles sort of, you know, there's different you know, segments and different portions that might not meet. So tell me how you got into the industry.
I started, I'm a stand-up comedian. Like when I started, I was doing comedy.
Okay.
So when I was studying in the States, I was doing stand-up. And then when I came back, a friend of mine was starting a channel on Ajman TV.
Mm-hmm.
And he thought I was funny and they needed a comedy show. He said, why don't you come and talk to the head of the station and pitch him your ideas. I said, all right, cool. So I went and I pitched ideas, and he said, okay, sounds good. You're funny. Who's going to write it? And so my friend volunteered that I would write.
He volunteered for you.
Yeah, he volunteered for me. He said, well, I mean, he's the comedian. He's got the joke, so he should write the show.
Yeah.
So that's how I started writing.
Okay.
So ever since then, I've been writing for TV. And then I think 2007, 2008, I focused on features. I started writing features. And then that's how I got into it. And I watched interviews with my favorite writers.
Mm-hmm.
How they got into it and what's their process, how they write.
And so how did you get into writing? Was it academic or was it?
Yes, I studied, I have an MFA in creative writing for film and TV from Ryerson University in Toronto.
Okay.
And I did my bachelor in film studies and film production. That was my undergrad.
Yeah, all right. And who are your favorite writers?
Luc Besson.
Okay. Yours?
I love Luc Besson. Luc Besson is actually the model I use for, I set up a little development company, so like my dream is to be the Arab world's Europa Corps. Seriously, that guy is he just decided he's going to do it himself. Writes, produce, directs. Like.
He was the best in the 90s.
Absolutely,
He was the master of writing.
Leon is like an education.
And now in the early 2000s, it's Jonathan Nolan.
Yeah, Jonathan Nolan.
What about his writing is it that intrigues you?
The characters. You watch it, The Dark Knight, and you feel like it's not a comic book movie. You know what I mean? I mean, they have explosions and effects and everything, but they're real. Like even the Joker, who's crazy. It's like, okay, I think I met someone like that. You know, like you can relate to everyone.
Yeah, I think I've met someone like the Joker in my life before.
And their journey and everything is just, the struggles they go through, the main characters, is phenomenal. And
there's a dark side, it's bigger than life, but at the same time it's real.
Yeah, it feels very real. And Aaron Sorkin, for me, is...
I was waiting, I'm sure that name would come up.
Oh man, Aaron Sorkin is... I actually got into writing features because of dialogue, which I found out years later, that's why Aaron Sorkin got into writing. He was a playwright first, right?
Yeah.
A Few Good Men was a play. But his thing is dialogue. and man, can he write dialogue, that guy.
Yeah. Well, when you come from a theatrical background, a theater background, you know words, spoken words are one of your biggest tools. Which brings me to the next question, actually, which is, you know, television is relatively new in the region. Cinema is even newer. I think what everybody is a lot more familiar with and has a longer history is theater. In the UAE and in Kuwait and the rest of the Gulf, theater has been around for a lot longer. Writers have been employed or hired in the theater for much more than any other medium. In many other aspects of television and film, you see some influences from theater that still remain. That's debatable, but that's a thought that is around. If you do agree with that, do you see any of that in writing?
Oh, big time. Theater is dominant here, in TV and in cinema. The masters of theater in the UAE, in Kuwait, in the Gulf, have, if you look at them, they are now they're now TV stars. They are TV producers. Some of them now are making films, but they always go back to theater. All the festivals of theater here in Fujairah, in Dubai, it's crowded. It's people. I think one of the reasons is that there's a philosophy behind theater that the older generation lived it. There was no TV, there was no cinema, so theater was the old art that spread and it was taught easily here. TV was never taught, cinema is never taught. Theater still, till now, is the only art that is taught in the region.
Only visual narrative.
Yes.
Yeah. You know, I've talked to people who say that you can't implement Western structure here because the stories here are different, and it'll be seen as Western if you implement a Western story here.
What's a Western story? Whole universe, the stories are...
Structure from the West. The conversation was structure from the West. If you take Western structure and you try to make a story here, it will not feel genuine to hear. Now, what are your opinions on that?
If the story is written well, it doesn't matter how you structure it. Yeah, and you're gonna have to, there's a journey for any character, whether in the West, East, wherever, right? So you start somewhere and you're going towards something, and something is stopping you from getting to that. And then you have to beat this that's stopping you and get to your resolution.
Your goal, yeah.
Right? It's the same for every story, every good story.
I think you were trying to answer that.
If you want to remake a Western piece into Arabic, there's something called adaptation, where we will have to adapt it into the culture. Yes, you can't. You know, if you have a story from Japan with a samurai, you can't bring samurai into UAE, so you'll have to switch it to
Bedouin warrior.
For instance. If you're going to go to the Vikings, a story of a Viking, you can't have that. Maybe you'll have Ahmed bin Majid, for instance, the ship with the ships and stuff. You know, that the closest that can get to the Vikings. So adaptation is there. And the West has adapted Eastern pieces before, like Old Boy. You know, Spike Lee did.
Of course.
Did that as well. He took it's a masterpiece. It's a masterpiece. He crushed it. Old Boy, for instance, has nothing to do with Korea. Has nothing to do with nothing. It's not a cultural thing. It's a story. It's a dark story. It's very gory. It's brilliant, and he tried to adapt it into the American culture, and he failed. So it's not only about bringing West to the East. There's a lot of East. For instance, The Departed, that won Academy Award. It was a remake of Infernal Affairs, and Infernal Affairs is brilliant. And The Departed was as brilliant as that as well, and they changed a lot in it as well. And so it's adaptation. You know, rule number one in adaptation: never be faithful to the original piece.
Never be faithful.
Never be faithful to the original piece.
Because you'll never be as good as that.
No, because you know there's adaptation from novel to screen. So this is what adaptation is. You can get me a story from the West, I can adapt it into us, but there are rules as well into adaptation.
Yeah.
I have to look into it and everything. I'll change a lot. I'll probably change the ending. I'll probably add characters, but the plot will be the same.
Okay.
Yeah, story. It's just
Yeah. Now, not just here, in Hollywood, in the UK, and most of the bigger film industries, it's always difficult to find a good script. It's one of the hardest things to do, and I've heard this from many different people that I've talked to, from biggest producers to filmmakers who are looking for someone to write with, to shoot a short film even. Why is it so hard to find a good script?
The scripts, writing a script it's not magic. It's not like you just snap your fingers and there's a script right there, right? But I think now the one of the reasons is that writers are stopping writing scripts in spec. They are waiting to being commissioned, and not everybody is commissioning nowadays. They're looking to option more than commission.
So spec is when you write something for free and you wait for someone to pick it up. Option is when someone basically buys the rights to the script for a certain period of time and then it can go back to the writer if it hasn't been produced then.
Script, you are writing a visual thing. So it's very different than writing a novel. You're not using words, you're using images. And not a lot of people have that in them, especially the self-trained ones or self-educated writers. It's really hard to write images. So you'll find them writing maybe 2 specs and waiting it to be picked up. And if they're not picked up, they kind of feel they give up.
The Arab Film Studio competition program is now adding a new version of it, and it's the Arab Film Studio screenwriting. So this is going to be the first time that is offered. So before it was just the narrative, then the documentary. Now there's one that's predominantly for screenwriters, and so it'll be an honor if you guys at any time during this period come and visit the screenwriters.
sure.
I would love to, because I do that in my free time. I teach whoever wants to learn, like a one-on-one. Yeah. It's because we have a lack, because everybody wants to be either an actor or a director, but they're not looking as a writer, or they're not looking even for a cameraman or anything.
Please keep doing what you're doing, because there is a lack of writers in the region, and I'm very honored to know both of you. And thank you very much for coming. It's been a pleasure to sit down and talk to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, until next time, thank you.